So when I started sharing these, what I call cheap properties online, my social media blew up. And people were like, "Oh my gosh, where did you find these? Like, where is this? Like, what's wrong with it?" And then I would research, and I'd come back and be like, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just it's in this, you know, it's not in Rome. It's in this smaller town, maybe on the Adriatic coast of Italy." But I researched it, and look, there's 2 restaurants, there's a pharmacy, there's a grocery store there. You could walk around the town. Anyway, and then people started sharing those, and it kind of took off from there. So the property to me was like the carrot that got me kind of like salivating and got other people excited.
Welcome to Mitlin Money Mindset, your weekly dose of inspiration and insights to ensure you enjoy each step of your journey. Whether you're saving for the future, planning your next big adventure, or simply looking to add more joy to your life, you've come to the right place. Now, let's dive in.
I'm Larry Sprung, your host for the Mitlin Money Mindset and founder and wealth advisor of Mitlin Financial. Today's guest is Tommy Sikes, founder of Traveltirement. Tommy believes that living abroad isn't just about seeing sights and being a tourist. It's about stepping into a life you've always wished for. It's about waking up each morning filled with excitement for what the day may bring and the contentment of knowing you're exactly where you're meant to be. Tommy is on a mission to combine his love for France and Italy with his experience as a certified financial planner to help others pursue their goal of living in France or Italy. These aren't just destinations, they are experiences. Through his platform, Traveltirement, Tommy offers invaluable insights, practical tips, and personalized advice for those looking to embark on a life of adventure and financial freedom. His innovative approach combines the joys of travel with smart retirement planning, making him a sought-after authority in both fields. Join us as we explore Tommy's journey, his expert advice on balancing travel and retirement, and how you too can live a life rich in experiences while maintaining a robust financial foundation. Well, I am super excited today to have Tommy Sikes from Traveltirement. He's the founder. As you all know, I love talking about travel. I'm a big fan of experiences over money and gifts. I think experiences are the way, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So welcome to the show, Tommy.
Thank you for having me, Larry. I'm excited to be on.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you. And, I know a lot about you and your background, but, to give our listeners a little bit of background and understanding of who you are and where you came from, I always find, and I say this probably on every episode, I always find the entrepreneurial journey so fascinating because it's so different, but a lot of times similar for many people in a lot of different ways. But can you share your path to founding Traveltirement so we can get an idea of, what led you up to that point? And then we'll spend a lot of time, speaking about that, of course.
Absolutely. So I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My dad was a physician, but he owned his own practice. He was with a big practice when he first got out of med school, but pretty soon knew he wanted to start his own practice. So I kind of grew up with a small business mindset. Just seeing him, he was the physician. My mom ran the books for his practice. So always had that opportunity to see it in action, and just grew up with it like, oh well, that's a thing you can do. It's not an unusual thing. So after college, went the corporate route and ended up leaving there to go into finance in the early 2000s. And I started with a company that allows you to open up your own office, like in a geographically local space. You're technically an employee, but still a little more of an entrepreneurial feel to it, as opposed to being in a large office with a bunch of other advisors or brokers. And then fast forward, I ended up, like a lot of people, leaving the corporate finance world and starting my own registered investment advisor, just here in North Carolina, working with my geographically local people for financial planning, investment advice, and the whole 9 yards. And the Traveltirement actually grew out of a personal passion, just basically scratching my own itch. Our three children, our youngest, our daughter, is heading off to college this fall, and we're going to be empty nesters. And so a couple of years ago, I started thinking, we love to travel. And, I wonder if there's a way I can leverage my passion, my experience as a certified financial planner, and combine that with my travel passion to give me something where I could potentially justify traveling more, maybe be able to work remote from some different locations. And anyway, I started researching, it's not really digital nomadism. It's more affordable travel, particularly for, again, empty nesters, retirees. And anyway, I shared my passion online. It seemed to be popular with a lot of other people, and it's now grown to be a pretty decent audience.
Amazing. I find it fascinating because we either see people who come from that entrepreneurial background like you, or they're, first generation entrepreneurs, right? They just got the bug and kind of figured it out themselves. And the only thing I would challenge you or say to you is I know you're an empty nester, and that's the term you use. And I used to use that term as well because my kids have been both out of the house for a few years now. And somebody pointed out to me that I'm not an empty nester, I'm a bird launcher.
Exactly.
I basically, launched my babies into the world, which I thought was a much different perspective than empty nesters, because I think empty nesterism, if you will, if that's even a word, kind of has this melancholy connotation to it, where if you start thinking about it, it kind of put it in a different perspective. And, feel free to use it because I did not trademark it. But, you clearly have the travel bug, and you did not mention that in your earlier years, your childhood leading up to, going into corporate world and then finance. Where did you get that from, the travel bug?
That definitely was from my parents. They were travelers just as long as I can remember, since I was, very young. They traveled all over. My dad was a huge, he's a travel planner. So he would research, read books, magazines, design these trips for our family or just for he and my mom. And it just, again, you grow up with it. It just becomes part of your DNA. And I was lucky when I was younger because they encouraged us to travel. It was like every year we're going to go on another great trip. We went to England. We went to France one year. We would go visit the Caribbean in North Carolina. That's, fairly close for us. But yeah, it just was a normal part of life. And I know that sounds a little elitist or I'm very lucky. I'm very fortunate to have had that experience. And it gave me this passion. And so that's one of the reasons I enjoy doing this so much, is sharing that passion with others. And the newsletter, I have a weekly newsletter, and every week I just get dozens of responses back from people saying, "Oh my gosh, I love to read about France, but I didn't know about this place and all the stuff there is to do here." Or if it's Italy, oh, well, I didn't even realize, they had these tax advantages in Italy for Americans. And anyway, just to see people discover it and have some of the passion that I have, it gives me a great feeling.
Yeah, I could only imagine growing up with that. I did not have that same privilege that you mentioned. I mean, the family I came from in the background, we traveled a bit, but just to give you an indication, I think the first time I was ever on a plane was when I was 21 or 22 years old, when I was already out of the house. And, now being able to put my kids in a position to travel quite a bit, you could see how they love that so much. And I agree with you. I think it's such a privilege to be able to do that, and to be able to give your family those experiences are unbelievable. So, at what point did you, where did that inspiration collide together, in terms of taking this this idea of travel and your love of travel into a side venture? I know you mentioned, now that the kids were out of the house, that was kind of the impetus, but was there more to it than that? Was it really that was the aha moment, or was this something you were kind of planning to do in some way, shape, or form all along?
Well, I'd always planned to travel more, and we have traveled with our kids a lot. And when they, I would share some of the stuff that I found with them also, and they were like, "Oh, that's amazing! You and Mom should go live in France for a month, and we'll come visit you." Like there was a an ulterior motive, but
There always is.
Yes, kind of the, I don't know, the turning point, like the real spark for Traveltirement was I started researching property, real estate in Italy and France. And we're not talking about, Paris. Paris is super expensive, but there are so many places in Italy and France, southwest of France, like directly south of France, the northwest of France. There are places where you can buy a stone built 2-bedroom, 2-bath cottage with an acre of land for $100,000, $120,000. And I mean, this is not a ruin. This is a livable, place. And then when I started researching Italy is even more insane. I mean, obviously in the United States, real estate prices are a little nuts, as they have been for a while. And anyway, so this idea that our house that we own here in North Carolina, the idea that we could sell this house, buy a house in France and Italy, and still have money left over, I was like, this is crazy to me. And I didn't see anybody else sharing the details. I'd heard, €1 homes program in Italy, and or in France, you hear like the escape to the chateau, buying these broken down chateaus and renovating them. But for people that just want to have an option of either a holiday home or a future retirement home, the affordability blew me away. And so when I started sharing these, what I call cheap properties online, my social media blew up. People were like, "Oh my gosh, where did you find these? Like, where is this? Like, what's wrong with it?" And then I would research, and I'd come back and be like, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just it's in this, it's not in Rome. It's in this smaller town, maybe on the Adriatic coast of Italy." But I researched it, and look, there's 2 restaurants, there's a pharmacy, there's a grocery store there. You could walk around the town. Anyway, and then people started sharing those, and it kind of took off from there. So the property to me was like the carrot that got me kind of like salivating and got other people excited. And then questions obviously just come from that. What's the tax situation? Do I need a visa? Can Americans even buy in France or Italy? And so I started researching these, sharing them, and then it just grew from there.
Yeah, great stuff. And I think you've kind of evolved from, what I think you call wander wealth to Traveltirement to cheap homes in Italy and France. Can you, share that process with us? Because I think it's an interesting one.
Sure. So Wander Wealth is technically still my registered investment advisor. Mm-hmm. So that's, for all the planners who are watching, that is my, financial planning investment advisory firm, kind of traditional, geographically close people that met at networking events, referrals, that kind of thing. Terrific. And obviously I love my clients, love that business, but you always hear about niching down, wanting to do something very specific for a very specific audience. And it makes it easier makes the business simpler, because your toolbox doesn't need to be quite as broad. And it can make it more attractive to people, because they're like, "Oh, well, that's the exact thing that I'm thinking of, or I need help with." So, when I started doing the Traveltirement stuff, my 2 personal favorite countries at the moment, at least, are France and Italy. And so initially, I would share maybe properties in Portugal or Spain, almost all in Europe. But then I started thinking about it. I was like, again, I don't want to spread myself too thin. So I was like, how about if I stick with my 2 favorites? I know I have the passion for them, so I have that motivation every day. But but also you start learning the details, and it's like there's a decent amount to learn about, the tax situation, how to buy property, the visa situation of these two countries. And so currently it's those two. So if somebody comes to me, they're like, hey, we've heard Spain is great. I'll refer them out to somebody else. I'll just say, hey, maybe in the future we'll do that, but I'm trying to stick to my knitting. And I think that's been beneficial, because then all the content you make, it becomes much more concentrated. People that come to your social media or to your website, you don't want to attract everybody. You want people to either be like, this is me. Like, I'm definitely want this, or, oh, this is absolutely not what I'm interested in. It's hard for people to understand that initially, but that's absolutely the best thing that can happen, is for people to be like, either love you, or I don't want to say hate you, but have no interest. Because it keeps you from, being wishy-washy about anything. You do a thing, you do it well, and the people that are attracted to that are gonna become, great clients.
Yeah. And I mean, are you know, I guess there's kind of two questions that I have there, because I think businesses always struggle with the whole notion of, niching down and, in your case, narrowing down to just content around Italy and France for the most part. Maybe you could share for a moment, we understand the point about attracting the right people versus maybe detracting the folks that you don't want to attract, if you will, or I guess deferring them away. But what other benefits have you seen from, narrowing down that content to just those two countries, if you will?
One side, obviously, like I said, the content becomes easier. So I have a YouTube channel, which has gotten to be pretty popular. And so if you go to YouTube and you search on cheap homes Italy, cheap homes France, I'm almost surely going to pop up in the list somewhere. So search becomes much easier, niching down, as opposed to somebody just, retiring to Europe. Are they talking about Norway? Are they talking about Scotland? Are they talking about, Greece? So it helps you. It makes it easier. The constraints make it a little easier when you're designing your content, and also when people are searching on content, you're going to pop up for those things. The other thing with niching is, and I didn't plan this, but there's been a ton of outreach from people in France and Italy, professionals and also expats who live there, who are like, oh my gosh, I wish I had this, or I wish I'd known about this, when I was starting my journey. Is there something I can help you with? Like, I live in this area of Italy. If you have people that want to come over to do maybe property tours, we can work out a way to, you can refer them to me, and we could collaborate together. Or, I saw you're doing a video on this little town. How about if I drive over there and take some pictures for you, like actually walk around and kind of give you the on the street view. I mean, little things like that, which again, I didn't plan, but I've had tons of that happen, and it's just it's a virtuous cycle, if you will.
Sure. So, I mean, one of the things we're all about here is, besides joy on the Mitlin Money Mindset, we're also about giving our listeners, tangible takeaways. And I'm sure there are plenty of people out there listening that are thinking about, or have thought about, or maybe they haven't considered, but should consider, the possibility of retiring abroad. What are a couple of, top tips that you would have for them if they are considering or contemplating retiring, abroad?
Sure. So I'll, since obviously my expertise is Italy and France, I'll just say both Italy and France are surprisingly affordable for being, again, G7 countries. These are not, what we consider, third world countries, anything like that. Well-developed transportation networks, international airports, large cities, small cities, tons of beach resorts, things like that. They're both super affordable depending on where you are. As I mentioned earlier, Paris area, fairly expensive, until you get to out quite a ways. But France is the largest country in Western Europe. So there's a ton of places you can go, different geographies, different landscapes, but still it's France. Terrific healthcare, terrific transportation. The roads are excellent. The bureaucracy is bad. So Italy and France, both legendary for their bureaucracy, and that's not a false statement. But the benefits that you can get living there, quality of life is second to none. When we move to Italy again, also affordable, more affordable from a cost of living standpoint. But Italy in the last few years has basically passed some tax laws where they're trying to attract foreigners, particularly to the south of Italy, to replenish. They've had a lot of migration within the country from the south, from the more rural areas, to the north where most of the population lives. And so they have some incredible tax benefits for people that want to live there, relocate, and retire in Italy. In fact, you can pay just 7% flat tax on all your worldwide income. And it's an incredible benefit if you compare it to the regular tax rates in Italy. And that's absolutely one of the most popular things that I do videos on and workshops, is trying to explain to people how it works, kind of what the pros and cons are of it, how to find these towns that qualify for the 7% flat tax. And that's a huge tax benefit.
So what I'm hearing is, if you're considering traveling abroad, it's not really a decision that you can make just on a whim. It's something that you really have to. And when I say abroad in this context today, I'm talking about Italy or France. It's not something you should just kind of plan on, hey, yeah, I'm just doing this. It's really something you have to put time, effort, and energy into, because there are pros and cons to each of those countries. There are pros and cons to areas within those countries. And you really have to, just like anything else, do your homework and figure out where you ultimately want to be and what's the best fit for you.
Exactly. And I like to talk about it in the realm of 3 M's. There's your mindset. So kind of what's your idea of living there? Like what is your daily life that you're imagining? That's an important thing. And you have to kind of get that right up front. If you're thinking, oh, well, the property is really cheap, I'm going to buy a bunch and like rent them out and become like a, landlord. It's not like the United States. Number one, the properties may or may not appreciate like they do in the United States. There's a lot of more restrictions on doing that. There's, legal restrictions on it. So you need to come into it with the right mindset that, is this really the life you want to live? The second M has to do with money. And that is, you really need to do an inventory of, what your income source is going to be. What assets do you have now that you're either going to liquidate to fund it? Or if you're not liquidating, what are you going to do with them if you still own property, maybe in the United States? You have to, again, it doesn't have to be a super complex situation, but you need to be considering what the answers to those questions are. Sure. And then the last one is just the mechanics. So again, do I need a visa? What type of visa do I need? What's the process to do that? If I'm buying property, how does that work? How do I actually get the money from the United States to France or Italy in euros? It's not secret and it's not super complicated, but you do need to consider these things up front. The last thing I'll just say is it's easy, and hopefully I'm not causing this, but it's easy when you find these like cheap properties. It's very easy to kind of fall in love with, oh my gosh, I can't believe I can get this property for this price, without considering, again, what amenities are nearby. How far is the nearest hospital? Do I have to have a car, to live here? It's easy to fall in love with those properties, but you really want to consider the area first, and then look for a property that fits you. Because a nice property in a terrible location will not work long term, but a decent property in a great location, you can fix it up, you can renovate, and that can turn into a dream home. So I always encourage people, even when you find a place you think, oh my gosh, I have to have this, you need to go do a discovery trip, do a test drive, live there for a couple weeks and live as a local, go shopping, go to the town hall, maybe meet some people and just see what the vibe is before you commit because again, it's still a substantial investment.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not willy-nilly.
I agree. And I think that's a great way to break it down: mindset, money, and mechanics. I mean, even if people are looking to relocate within the state, so many times we will have the families that we serve go down there for a season or two to check out a given area. We had one family that thought they wanted to buy a home in a certain part of Florida, and the first year they went down there to rent, they didn't like the community. They didn't like the area. Had they bought that home, they might have been stuck there for a while, depending upon what the market looks like, because it's a lot easier to go in and rent for a little while, get to learn the area, and then buy once you know that this is where I want to be, then buy and then have to go through the mechanics of selling and buying a new place. So I would imagine you want to do some of that recon in advance, just like I described with something in France or Italy, the same way, to kind of get a sense of where you want to be and then kind of start looking for those properties. So
Absolutely.
I think those 3 M's are great points. So, for people who are, using social media, different avenues, I know you've been very successful with YouTube. As you mentioned, you hit 1 million views, which is unbelievable. 1 million views in a year on YouTube. For those that are working to grow their audience and kind of strive and work towards that, what advice do you have for them? How did you get there? I can't imagine it was just luck. I'm sure maybe there's a little bit of that involved, but I'm sure there was a lot of strategy there as well.
Yep. I mean, there's definitely some luck involved. I think the pandemic obviously caused people to start looking at other options, places to live, maybe do things that they had been dreaming about. Maybe it sped it up in their mindset, but it's definitely been some trial and error. But it's still every week I will get on the computer and watch the videos of some of the other channels that I watch and respect, and try to kind of meta think about, like, why is this interesting to me? Like, what made me click on this thumbnail? Kind of what's the underlying draw, and try to think about, like, for myself, what was the kind of the impetus. The other thing is there's tons of content, free content, where you can learn, like, what makes a good thumbnail. That to me, and it sounds cliche, but it's like the book cover. They say don't judge a book by the cover, but if you're walking through the bookstore, the bright cover with the big black lettering on it is going to naturally draw your eyes. You might walk over there, open it up, and be like, this is not for me. But the first goal of YouTube or social media, really, like to open a post or a thread, the first goal is get them to click, get them to open it or pause. So thumbnails on YouTube, I can't express how important that is. And I see a lot of people, because I have people contact me, ask me questions about this. For a lot of people, that's the absolute last kind of stage for them is, okay, I've got the video, I've edited it, I know where kind of what the topic is and what links I'm going to put in. Now, what should I put as the thumbnail? And sometimes it'll just be like a still of their head, kind of just looking at the camera. I mean, the thumbnail is absolutely the most important part of YouTube.
Do you start with that and then create the content around that? Or because it seems to me you're saying, like, it sounds like you were alluding to the fact that people sometimes either do it backwards or maybe we're just trying to say that the thumbnail's an afterthought and it shouldn't be.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's very early in the process. So I kind of have now that I've done, I don't know how many videos I've done now, but 50 something maybe. There's a style that I know has resonated. So, part of this is just consistency, and you're just going to learn, which ones do well, which ones don't well. don't do well. But what I'll do is when I know I'm going to do a property video, the first thing I'm going to do is look through, like I'm going to show an individual property, look through the property photos on the listing and try to pick out, okay, which one is going to be that carrot on the thumbnail where, maybe it's got a swimming pool. So I'm going to have, the picture of the property with a swimming pool, and I'm going to have a little thing that says, only 89,000 euros with a swimming pool, and be pointing to the pool. Something that's going to be very like engaging, but people are going to be like, no way. There's no way.
I need more. I need to learn more.
Yeah. Or the probably the most popular video I've done, certainly over the last 6 months, it had a picture of a beautiful beach in Puglia, southern Italy. I mean, gorgeous blue water. And it says, cheap home, and it's got 7-minute walk, and it's got a pointing to the beach. And so people are like, oh my gosh, like I want to live by this beach. And so you definitely have to think about it. Like, what's the concept going to be? Now, all the other stuff, I share, property photos. I talk about the area it is, all that stuff. That's super important. It still you need to deliver on the promise that's in the YouTube. I mean, on the thumbnail. So you need to come with the goods, but getting people just to click on it's an art in and of itself. I'll just say it that way.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And, I want to shift for a moment, because a lot of people talk about, from a marketing perspective, like social media platforms like YouTube, basically you're renting space on their platform, right? You're basically using them. They change their algorithm, they change something else, that could significantly impact your exposure, your views, your marketing, distance, if you will. One of the areas where you can own that audience is through newsletters. I think entrepreneurs are looking in general to own that audience, and that's something you've also had success with. So how have you grown that newsletter list? Because that's where you own your audience. They're, delivering it right to their inbox versus using a platform like YouTube or other social media platform where you're renting it.
Yep. No, I totally agree. You don't want to build your house on rented land, because you never truly control it. But yeah, email list, which is, newsletter list, absolutely critical. And I did start doing that early. And for anybody who's interested, if you go to my website, traveltirement.com, it is barely a website. It is literally just one page. There are no posts. There's no contact me. There's nothing. There's only one thing that people can do when they go to that page, and that is sign up for the newsletter or leave. I don't want to give people any other option. If they have a question, they can sign up for the newsletter and they can email me. I don't have a menu. There's nowhere else you can go on the website. That has been pretty key too, at least to start building this. Now, eventually, obviously, I do want to have more content and blog posts and all that kind of stuff. But what I'll do is, for every, social media post that I do that I think, this is probably a popular topic, I'll kind of like the thumbnail, make that first tweet or the top of the LinkedIn post. You want something that's engaging, that makes them go, oh, no way. Or that's really interesting. Or, oh my gosh, I was just thinking about that. Something to make them open it. Then towards the bottom, you want to reference your newsletter or your email list as a way to get the next step, the next piece of information. Hey, if you loved seeing this cheap property, I share multiple cheap properties every Saturday in your inbox. Sit on your couch with your cup of coffee and go along with me. Go sign up at traveltirement.com. And you'll see that in every one of my YouTube videos. It's not long. It's fairly brief. Hey, if we haven't met, I'm Tommy from traveltirement.com. If you dream about retiring to Italy or France or owning a holiday home there, you should join my newsletter. It comes out every Saturday, where I share cheap properties and tips on doing just that. Something very simple like that. And every day, before we got on here, I checked. I think I have 15 new email subscribers today. And I've been traveling recently. I have not posted a YouTube video in the last 3 weeks, I think. And I still every day am getting probably 10 to 30 email subscribers on the list. So you can start slow, but definitely start building an email list, whether you call it a newsletter or whether you offer a, what they call a lead magnet, which would be like, here's the top three mistakes people make when moving to Italy, or here's the top 5 best regions in France to move to, and just have a simple like Google Doc or something that'll get them to want to join your email list. It's absolutely critical.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And you've had some great takeaways. And, as we've talked about, Tommy, we're all about joy on this show, and travel and experiences brings me a lot of joy. But we ask each of our guests the same final question. I'm going to do the same today, which is, what did you do today that brought you joy and put you in the right mindset for success?
Number one, I love that you do this, Larry. And of course, I follow you on social media, and I just love they're always tying back to joy because I think we don't have enough of it in the world.
Thank you.
One thing that I do just about every day that gives me some joy, and this, again, sounds very simple. I'm an early riser, so I typically am one of the first up in the house, is I really enjoy making a cup of coffee, going down and sitting on the front porch with my dog and dreaming about travel. And I get tons of personal inspiration just browsing, properties in Italy and France, reading some of the blog posts that I follow for Italy and France. And I'm always in the mode of where's the next adventure going to be. But spending, about 30 minutes just sitting there, it's quiet, it's like personal time, having a cup of coffee and just appreciating the moment and all the opportunities that I have ahead of me just always gives me joy.
Love it. I love it. And it sounds like a great way to kick off the day. But Tommy, we're going to have all of your information in the show notes. But if people want to connect with you, learn more about you, I think I know where this is going to go, learn more about Traveltirement, what's the easiest and the best place for them to go?
The best place to go is the newsletter or the website. And that is at traveltirement.com. So like the word travel and retirement, just take out the RE, traveltirement.com. You can also search on YouTube for Traveltirement, and I'll pop up there too. And please, feel free if you want to get in touch, join the newsletter, shoot me an email, ask me any questions you have, or on YouTube, leave me a comment. I try to respond to literally every comment. So I'm an open book if anybody has any questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you for spending these minutes with us. It's 30 plus minutes. I appreciate it greatly. A lot of great nuggets in here for our entrepreneurs, business owners, and people who are just interested in travel. I think there's a lot of nuggets in here. So thank you for that, and enjoy your day. I want to thank Tommy Sikes for being a guest on the Mitlin Money Mindset. Tommy's parents introduced him to travel and encouraged him to see the world. He is now taking his passion and helping others to navigate this path if it's their love too. Life is to be lived, and the money we accumulate is there to provide us joy. Tommy is simply helping families find their joy through travel and living in Italy and France. Tommy Sikes and Traveltirement can be found across most social media platforms. All the contact information needed to find them can be found in the show notes.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Mitlin Money Mindset. Remember, it's not just about the money, it's finding joy in the journey and embracing the right mindset. If you love the show, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Don't forget to follow along for more tips and inspiration. Please visit the social links below to connect with Larry or his guests. Until next time, keep smiling, keep thriving, and remember to think about, what did you do today that brought you joy?
The opinions voiced in the Mitlin Money Mindset Show with Lawrence Sprung are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. No strategy ensures success or protects against loss. To determine what may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Investment advisory services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Guests on the Mitlin Money Mindset Show are not affiliated with CWM LLC.